Okay, welcome back to Reality Bytes. Thankfully, we have Aaron Franz. Franz, is that how you pronounce it? Franz or Franz?
It's Franz, yeah.
Franz. Okay. Many people have seen your documentary on the age of transitions. I watched it myself a few years ago, and I watched it again the other night. There, I've seen it a couple of times now, 3 times now, I think, 4. Who knows? But you start off with 9/11. And I suppose in many ways that's how a lot of us got to where we are today. And how did you kind of get into this for want of a better term, truth movement? Because I'm not really that happy with that kind of term myself, because it implies we're going somewhere. It implies we're going somewhere, and I don't see it. But so how did you come into this genre, shall we call it?
Well, much as you described there, Neil, I looked at the whole 9/11 thing, and I was actually involved in a 9/11 truth group back in Columbus, Ohio, when I was living there. Around the years, so was it 2006, 2007 is when I started getting into that, and one thing leads to another, as they say, and you start looking up all sorts of topics, and I don't know, I was just in that mindset. I was doing that, and I'm sure all the listeners can relate to that whole process, whatever we want to call that, and somewhere along the line, I came across the Wikipedia page for transhumanism, and then I kind of just fit what I found about transhumanism on that page into the whole paradigm of conspiracy culture. And again, that's a flawed term too, but you gotta find some sort of term. So I guess that's what initially happened for me.
Okay, it's similar to myself. I'd kind of looked at 9/11 and thought, no, that's just not right. But I never really looked at it again for a couple of years, and then I was out in Bulgaria. I didn't have a TV, and I started just looking at stuff. I thought, I'll go back and look at that again, and then you kind of takes you down all these rabbit holes, and you decide that rabbit hole's just full of rabbits. There's no point going down that one, and you dig your way back out and go down a sensible one.
Yeah.
But so you. I mean, are you from a kind of technical background yourself, in terms of that's what piqued your interest in transhumanism?
Not so much. I mean, later, well, after the fact, I got into bike mechanic work, and that's only rudimentary mechanical stuff. But I do really enjoy that sort of thing. However, before I made the film, I come from an art background. Really, I went to school at an art school. I studied media. My focus was in animation and video, so it was kind of a natural step for me to make a documentary of any kind. And I just started looking up the transhumanism thing. I realized how important it was, and how people weren't really talking about it in the way that I was, in the context that I was seeing it, you know what I mean? And again, from the alternative media sort of context, nobody's really talking about it too much. There were actually a couple of people that kind of endeared themselves to me by the fact that they actually mentioned the subject. There were only a couple at the time. So I don't know, I just decided to make a video, and I was just kind of, initially I was just going to leave it at that, just kind of put the video out and then let it be what it is. And later on down the line, I don't know, I got interviewed a couple of times. I was just like, well, let's just keep doing this alternative media thing and see what that turns into. You know what I mean? That's where I am today, I guess.
Yeah, watching it myself, you just keep going, and something else crops up, and you go, I'll try that, and you go down that path and see what it takes you. Then you get fed up with that and go down another one. It's like, well, I mean, it's like, I met a load of people, and they start going down like every rabbit hole and try and cover everything, and you just can't do it because there's so much stuff out there that you have to be a bit selective and say, I'm going to look at this 3 or 4 topics or something, and then study them, and then move on to another 3 or 4 or whatever, and then come back to the other stuff later if you want to update yourself on it or whatever. That's what I find myself doing now. So it could be a while before I look at I don't know, say transhumanism. I'm looking at it now, but it could be 3 or 4 years down the line. I'll come back and look at it again, see what it is or whatever. But in terms of making the documentary, I mean, it's not to praise you too highly or anything, or whatever. But I'm not known for that. But even when I had my coffee, I wasn't that kind to the customers either. But anyway, it's just, I mean, it's very well. I mean, that was your first documentary.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've done other personal projects before. I've done some professional media work. I've done, probably, I'll say, be honest, and done more personal stuff. And some of my other personal stuff could be classified as documentary. However, I don't tend to fit into genres too well. So it was like a documentary of sorts, but it was also something else, and I couldn't really even tell you what my other stuff really would be. So I don't know. I've that's one of my peculiar character traits, I guess, that I don't always fit into categories so well. So I don't even know how to answer the question quite properly as a consequence.
always never fit into somebody else's category. That's the best way, anyway.
Yeah.
And well, okay. In terms, I mean, do you want to take us through the documentary, kind of piecemeal, as it were, but kind of briefly, and just talk about the aspects of it that you feel we've moved on since you made that documentary, and kind of see where those aspects of the film are now as we've moved on in time. Do you see a lot of progress from the time you made the documentary, a lot of things in it that have actually come true now?
Yeah, well, there's certainly been a lot of technological progress since that time. And the film itself, the good way to start in explaining it is the title, Age of Transitions. Age of Transitions isn't something that I came up with. It's something that Newt Gingrich, a person who I'm sure people will be well aware of. He's a famous man, famous politician. He came up with that term in his introduction to this technological summit put on by the Department of Commerce and oh geez, I can't even remember now. It was the Department of Commerce and the oh god, it's been so long I can't even remember now. Jeez Louise. But anyway, he was at this, it was this big group of a lot of officials from military, from government, from academia. The National Science Foundation. That's it, the National Science Foundation, Department of Commerce, and eluded me there. So a lot of, bigwigs from private, government, military sphere were there. And he was kind of like the keynote guy that gave the intro speech. And in it, he talked about the Age of Transitions being a time where all these, what they called in the report to this big meeting, they called them converging technologies. So converging technologies are what they described as nanotech, biotech, information technology, and cognitive technology, like neuroscience. And they call them converging because all these separate scientific disciplines were working on one another. So as one developed, it helped develop the other ones. You start getting more powerful computers and information technology. You can process data in neuroscience better. So it's pretty obvious how that works. However, they foresaw in the future real big advancements in terms of like implantable chips that you use to enhance human intelligence, that sort of thing, enhance human performance. That was a big term they used, human performance in physical and cognitive sense. So that my video starts out just explaining that report, just a couple little notes on it, and like some important things for people to see about that. And it goes from there, and it just tries to see, I was trying to extrapolate where that might be going, and I bring up other examples beyond just that report in the video.
Well, of course, we've seen some of the examples of that with the athletes. I can't even remember his name. The guy that's just been jailed for shooting his girlfriend. The Blade Runner. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, that's more kind of overt. You can see that, and people are going, "Oh, that's," and it's, you're not going to walk down the street with those things on. You might run very fast, but you're not going to walk down the street with them on. So they're not aesthetically pleasing, are they? But talking about Newt Gingrich, he was the same guy who was handing out what was the name of the book? Future Shock, was it, on the Houses of Congress, I think. And saying
Sure,
it was
yeah,
the best,
not
the best book
surprised
he'd ever.
me.
Yeah, he said it was the best book he'd ever read. I've got a copy of it, not here. It's in a loft in England, but it's awful. I mean, I don't know how you think. He can't have read many books, but it's pretty awful. But again, it's about the same kind of subject that you're talking about here. It's all about where we're going, and that people will have to adapt or die basically, because this is the way we're going to take the world, and that's it. I can't remember who wrote the book, but Future Shock, and there was a sequel to it as well. I can't remember the name of that either.
It didn't happen to be somebody like Toffler or something like that. Was it?
Yes,
I've no.
yes,
Was
yes,
that him?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It rings a bell. I can look it up later. Yeah, Toffler. Yeah. That was it. Alvin.
Yeah.
The chipmunk. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. The leader of the chipmunks.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of where we are now, okay, we've got the guy with the big blades who can run very fast. And we've also seen obviously pacemakers. I mean, very old technology, but that's part of transhumanism in itself. I mean, it's almost a forerunner to an artificial heart completely. I would suggest it's a prototype, if you like. But when we're seeing robotic arms and things now coming in, and it's always pitched, as in the health profession, it's always pitched as helping people. And the film, what's the film? Avatar, is it? Where they've got the guy in a wheelchair and they make him into this kind of super soldier and all this kind of stuff. I was speaking to Suzanne Postle the other day there, and we were talking about pills that you can swallow now, which will send off a signal and they'll go through your body, and almost like the film Fantastic Voyage, where they'll go through your body in nanotechnology and discover if you're ill or not. Whether you are or not is irrelevant. They're going to put the stuff in you anyway. They can be read through a magnetic field. So there obviously got some metal content in there somewhere. So you've got all these metallic particles going through your body, and they're surely not just for that kind of thing. I mean, what could these possibly be used for, do you think?
Well, I mean, transhumanist thing, when they're talking about nanotech and biotech for medical purposes like that, they like to reiterate the fact that these things could be used for pretty much anything you want them to be used for. And yes, at first, the idea is to heal sickness and certain problems, ailments, things like that. But later, when the technology is advanced enough and we can just use it whatever way we want, use it for more sort of just on a whim even, like eventually where you start healing people at first, but then it becomes sort of a weird sort of art form even, where people can fill their bodies with nanotech to alter themselves, kind of like in a body art sort of way, like you can turn your skin blue or something if you want, just for the fun of it. So they kind of play up that whole angle too, the transhumanists themselves, and kind of selling the ideas here in just to get people to think that it's going to be a fun thing, and it's going to be a liberating thing, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be playing around a lot. we're gonna heal the broken first, and we're going to end old age, and nobody's going to die at all. That's first on the list, of course. But after that, we're just all going to live in a sort of utopian playland for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, you won't need that handset anymore to play your Call of Duty. You'll just be able to think your way through the game, if you can think at all. But this stuff is obviously it's going into your brain as well, and if they say this stuff can be read using magnetic scanners or some other device, these things in your brain are going to be transmitting signals from your brain to somebody else. And I'm sure that won't just be a one-way process.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. That's the cognitive enhancement thing is probably one of the biggest transhuman selling points, I guess. We're all going to be super intelligent to keep up with artificial intelligence, of course. And yeah, if you're putting tiny machines or whether they be whatever kind of power these machines have, if they're just sort of receivers or transmitters, they may just be that, but they're transmitting to some supercomputer that's feeding all this data that came from your body, it came from your brain, and it's recording that. Yeah, your brain is essentially on a supercomputer, and the obvious question is who runs a supercomputer, who built it, for what purpose, what are they doing with the data that's coming from your mind, from your body, what sort of feedback is there two-way feedback where you're putting your thoughts into this machine, but its thoughts also go into you, assuming this is an AI machine of some sort, or if somebody's just typing in commands to you. I mean, obviously, if this technology gets advanced enough, that seems pretty feasible. So, I mean, yeah, how much of ourselves in our own personal life, which used to live completely in our head, do we want to open up? And who are we opening it up to? Are we ever really going to have the answer to that question? I mean, that's the obvious question with these things. It kind of gets glossed over. It's always glossed over for some reason. I don't know why.
Because I don't want you to know.
Yeah.
But, it comes down to the simple logic that are your thoughts actually going to be your own, or is somebody putting them in there? You know, and I can't understand why anybody would think that's a good idea. You know, unless that thought was put into the head by somebody else through nanotech. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's a ridiculous concept to suggest that we have to introduce nanotech and cognitive enhancement to keep up with artificial intelligence by becoming artificially intelligent ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense at all, because we're not human then. We're not actually human.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, according to the transhumanists. That's all the better. They don't like being human too much.
Well, because humans think for themselves, and we can't have that, can we? So, I mean, okay, let's go down the other route. The military, obviously, well, all of this stuff, if you know, most of it, if not all of it, is done by the likes of DARPA and people like that, the military-industrial complex. Are there, to your knowledge, these super soldiers already created?
Not to my knowledge. I do know that these programs have been running for years. I mean, I think decades even at this point. I know the Army has one. I don't know the name of it specifically, but as you say, it's the military-industrial complex mainly, just developing these various technologies, some things like robotic exoskeletons. That's one that we've seen in the movies over and over again. All these companies are doing, you know, your Raytheons, your Boeings, et cetera, Northrop Grumman, BAE Systems. All those guys are just working on contracts that are put out by DARPA. So DARPA puts out all these contracts like, okay, if you have, write us up a vision for, they'll come up with the craziest thing. Work on an AI-powered robot that can find its way out of a cave if you drop it in a cave. And this isn't the most ridiculous thing I just thought up out of my head, but it may well be an actual contract that DARPA's put out. They just put out so many, and these companies latch onto them like, oh yeah, we can do that, and then they get their contract, they make their big money, and you know, they come back with technologies that sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I mean, it works, and this is how the transhuman vision is being developed. It's being developed within the military-industrial complex. You're very astute to mention that, Neil. However, a lot of people like to not even realize that. Again, that's something that's shied away from in typical transhumanist conversation. They don't like to pay attention to that simple fact that that's where the real development is.
Well, of course, the job of the military is to kill people. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that should make us suspicious right away. They're not known for their benevolence.
Yeah.
We only have to look at what's happening in the world today to see that. But in terms of the military, I mean, in terms of the cognitive enhancement thing, I mean, I remember years and years ago seeing the helmets that these jet fighter pilots were wearing, and they were suggesting that because the speeds had increased so much with the aircraft, that the pilots were unable basically to keep up with what was going on if they got into a kind of dogfight situation, because everything was just going past them so fast the brain couldn't cope with it. That was a long time ago, and jet fighters have supposedly improved a lot since then, so I guess they're going a lot faster. So that would suggest that they've already solved that problem in some way, either whether it's through the helmet or in some way they've made the pilots better.
I think the way they're going in that regard is the fully autonomous planes. Actually, they want to get rid of the pilot altogether. Like, forget the human. We're just gonna have this autonomous vehicle. And you've got the drones of today, which are primarily piloted by like a guy with a video game controller on the other end. At least when they're killing people with these things, that's the idea. But they also can be autonomous too and fly autonomously. And I think the idea in going forward is to have them be completely autonomous with AI systems, basically. I don't know for sure.
I used to wonder about these drones and missiles that went off target and hit a hospital or something. I wonder if you've got all these children playing online games. I wonder if they were actually doing it for real and not even knowing it. I often wondered that. I thought, and then they get a knock on the door, and mum answers the door, and some guy says, "Can we speak to little Johnny? We hear he's very good at computer games." Would you like a job?
Yeah, I think to an extent that does happen. The whole video game to military recruitment thing. The military has put out these recruitment centers where basically they're giant arcades, and these kids play games. And while they're playing games, you get the Air Force recruitment guy come up next to little Johnny and say, "Oh, hey, you're pretty good there. Do you ever think about a career in the Air Force?" And they go, "Oh, I don't know." And slowly but surely they convince him to join the Air Force. That is a reality. That's something that I know that has been done.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well. And anything's possible with these guys. You wouldn't know what they're up to next. But it always struck me that all these war games, and then you hear of missiles going off course, and like literally miles and miles off course, and it's supposed to be smart bombs, but they don't seem very smart. It's almost like a kid. It's almost like a child has been directing that one, But who knows? Okay, getting back to the cognitive enhancement and the whole concept, and as we mentioned earlier with the particles in your mind, signals going back and forward. The hive mind, which is the dream of those at the top of transhumanism, I suppose, is to basically connect everybody into this thing so they can supposedly reap the rewards of collective human consciousness or brain power or whatever. Do you see much movement in that?
Well, yes, yeah, I do actually, because I think philosophically speaking, for the people who are promoting the concept of the hive mind, they see internet as a whole as kind of like this beginning phase of hive mind, where everybody puts all their thoughts into the collective data stream, and people work together with it, and you start to lose your individualism. So I think they like to, metaphorically say that internet is the beginning of that sort of thing, and similar technologies are too. It's hard to say. It's weird how that hive mind thing is sold, because I see a lot of promotion of that kind of tie into religious concepts, actually. The religious and definitely New Age concepts, all different denominations of religion, actually. The concepts of, ascending to this different spiritual sphere, and also the fact that enlightenment of the individual is in part recognition that they're part of a larger whole, the whole of the mind of God, these sorts of things. So in a sense, these religious pursuits of becoming one with the universe, one with the mind of God, one with everything, ascension into a new higher level, all these sorts of concepts feed right into what could be like a technological project of the hive mind, sort of giving that to people in a real tangible sense, because it would be a technology enabling such a rapture type event, which is, I don't know, I find it fascinating, the links between these sorts of philosophical concepts, religious ideas, and actual hard technologies being produced that feed into them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the subtitle of your book mentions that these people are basically trying to be gods. They want to be. Well, I don't actually know if the people at the top are actually going to do all this stuff. I think it's going to be left below. I think I think it was Bertrand Russell said, or one of the Huxleys, I can't remember, that the ruling class would be left to be wild, because they had to maintain their natural instincts, survival instincts or something. But everybody else would have to be changed. So they wouldn't. What was it about the analogy between the unthinkable becoming as unthinkable as sheep protesting against the eating of mutton or something?
Yeah. I remember that quote to that effect. Yeah. They wouldn't be able to resist. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll go to a little piece of music and then we'll come back. Okay, welcome back to Reality Bytes. On the I keep getting confused with the dates in America because they're written the wrong way around for me. But anyway,
today is the 11th of December.
The 11th, yeah. So on this computer it's 12:11, and on my computer it's 11:12. So so anyway, I listened to your recent pod. We're getting away from we'll finish with the singularity, what the singularity is, and maybe how far down the road we are, and then we'll go on to your latest podcast regarding the inherent racism within some of the truth community. So the singularity, just to finish off the transhumanism section, what is it?
The singularity basically is a hypothetical future where machines become intelligent. So artificial intelligence machines become real. Their level of problem-solving ability reaches that of a human being once the singularity hits. And then the thought is from there, they exponentially get more and more intelligent because they're able to modify themselves. The machines can now work on themselves, tinker around with their own minds and enhance them. And you sort of get this runaway expansion of their cognitive ability where they become unimaginably intelligent. And from there, you get into the realm of fiction and speculation of, well, what would such an intelligence do? And so that's the singularity scenario, is the arrival of true artificial general intelligence is what they call that.
Yeah, well, I mean, where we end up is probably somewhere like the Terminator movie, where men fighting machines, because the machines are far smarter and they've decided that men are no longer required. I mean, is that where we're going, into that kind of abyss?
You know what's interesting is that scenario, the Terminator scenario. To alleviate that, the people who are who are promoting the singularity and transhumanism would say that, well, we have to join the artificial intelligence and just become one with them, and that's the whole transhuman project. So that's the way they always frame it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the so-called elite, as they like to refer to themselves, aren't going to be part of that. That's for sure. So I wonder where they'll be living. You know, I mean, if the machines are far smarter than them, then how are they going to survive? I mean, it's kind of seems suicidal to me. Especially.
Yeah, I don't know about this whole singularity scenario. I really don't think it's going to occur. I'm not to say that AI isn't going to develop, and certainly not to say that's not already here, but it's doing sort of narrow AI is here and it has been for a long time. And what that is used for is kind of, it's boring. Nobody really cares. It's just sort of like filing things away and making sense of all sorts of huge amounts of data. So that's just boring stuff. Who cares about that? It's fun to talk about the sort of fictional singularity scenario more so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see it happening either, because I think it is suicide for even those that think it's a good idea. I think it's suicide. But anyway, moving on, the truth movement. I think it's fair to say it's not in a great shape, is it? I mean, we've got a couple of people who, whilst stating that they don't want to be seen as leaders, the way they carry themselves and the way they act like leaders.
Yeah.
I was at we were talking off air there. I was at Bilderberg in 2013, and I saw the David Icke and Alex Jones show. And
Yeah.
having been on Alex Jones back in 2010, I met him twice at Bilderberg when he was outside in the street, and he was having trouble getting in. And at that point, I'd been going back and forward so often that they'd stopped searching me. And I says, I know the guys in the door. Come on, let's just go in.
Yeah.
And he just wouldn't have anything to do with it. He wanted to be, up there, the big man, and all the rest of it. Him and David Icke, and it was quite pathetic to see people who are supposedly, getting themselves out of one cult called this world system, and just throwing themselves into another one. It just seems madness to me. But anyway, the whole cases, the cases of the black people being shot and the ensuing trouble in the streets, etc., etc. I've been reporting on that for a couple of weeks now. Just done a couple of pods on it, and it seemed to me that the whole focus was on race. The focus was to be taken away from the police brutality aspect of it, and the victims were always kind of demonised as, oh, that guy's a criminal. He's got a long track record of committing crime, as if that's any excuse for shooting somebody that's unarmed 8 times or something,
Mm-hmm.
But the focus was certainly taken away from the police and made all about race. And
Yeah.
you mentioned in your last podcast that you'd noticed this kind of endemic racism starting to really come to the fore in a lot of the police movement. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. I guess this is such a depressing topic, and making that podcast was something that I was not happy about at all, but something that I felt just had to be done. And we've got to explore this topic further because it's important. If we want the truth movement, alternative media, to be at all useful, we got to throw in the garbage everything that isn't. And certainly, race politics, generally speaking, I see them promoted in the mainstream media on a daily basis, more so every day. And it's crazy how many of these sorts of stories, like you're saying there, the Ferguson, Missouri stories, and all these sorts of terrible stories are there's more of them every day. But again, the focus, the way that the story is told, it's told in a way in which the audience, again, mainstream media, so this is mass audience, we're talking about the whole of society, that the audience will get emotionally invested and see it as basically only a race issue. And again, the police brutality thing is just kind of, it's just a crutch to get the whole race politics, or it's a lever to make race politics more of an issue. It's like, oh yeah, police brutality in a racist sense. And so, and with Obama as president, certainly they're playing up the race card there and trying to get all segments of the American population angry at each other and really fighting each other in a very base tribal sense. They're appealing to the lowest common denominator in us. It's working, unfortunately. It works on a large majority of people. They believe the context in which these stories are given. There's more and more of these stories all the time. And the bizarre thing for us here in the alternative media is to see the alt media now, it's just they're ramping up their coverage on these same events. And the context in which they bring them up is a racial context too, and they like to say that it isn't, and they like to sort of dodge the issue and like, oh, we're not racists. Meanwhile, on their Twitter pages, they post the most racist. It's ridiculous. These images and these campaigns they put up. It's like, are you kidding me? You're really doing this? So all this is happening, and at the same time, the alternative media, the mainstream media, just pushing race politics and wanting people to self-destruct and fight each other, divide and conquer. I don't know what's going on, but it is a big problem.
Yeah, the same thing's been going on in the UK for years, mainly against Muslims in Britain. And
Yeah.
every time there's some major crime, there's a Muslim gang involved, as if English gangs don't do these things either. It's
Hmm.
there's no organised English criminals; they're all Muslims. Um, but I mean, we had a case in I think it was Rochdale or Rotherham, I can't remember. There was a paedophile ring which was predominantly run by Muslims. But I mean, there are the paedophile rings all over Britain, and most of them, the vast majority, I'd suggest, are run by average middle-class white folk, uh, and politicians, of course. But
Yeah.
in terms of the how, I mean, we've got to distance ourselves from this stuff, obviously, and
Hmm.
I have no truck with it whatsoever. Um, but and you also mentioned in that podcast that the worst off truth movement movie, and
Mm-hmm.
I think you said you weren't sure if that would ever be made, but I think it well might be,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as you say, there's so many examples to choose from,
Hmm.
and as you say, people go on rants and say the most horrendous or just outright stupid things, um, and other people will come out with all the stuff we're talking about, and then they'll mix it up with stuff that is just so idiotic, like somebody parked the moon there, it's a spaceship. They may as well say it's full of cheese, you know,
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
gets roped in. We have to distance ourselves from that as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of examples of what we need to distance ourselves from, and as you say,
Yeah.
all of those examples could be made into the worst of the truth movement movie, and it
Well,
and that would be the end of it.
it would be. It's not like this is something new. There's been like a whole bunch of nonsense in the alternative media for a long time, but I mean, the racist stuff is taking it to a whole new level, I think, because this isn't just like silly new age nonsense like the moon isn't actually there and they're like promoting that sort of idea. They're actually promoting fascist ideology and racist ideology now. And my God, if you want to destroy a movement or, a group of people that are just generally doing the same sort of thing, well, that's the perfect thing to do. Given all the coverage on the mainstream media, everybody's tuned into this whole race politics thing already. They're just chomping at the bit to see another, scapegoat come up, another racist pop up that they can chastise. And the court of public opinion, uh, all it takes is guilt by association. Therefore, all of us, Neil, you, yourself, and me, we do alternative media. We could be deemed guilty just because we're similar to or these people who are racist fascists.
Well, I mean, you might see down the road that something called the truth movement or alternative media is regarded as a terrorist organisation. And
Mm.
if we openly state that we're not officially members of anything, but we are part of it, then we could be, as you say, guilty by association, and just that's an excuse to drag you off to wherever they want to drag you off to, because you are claiming to be part of this movement, as it were. Um, Again, the whole racist argument, it just plays into the hands of the very people who were trying to, well, I won't say topple, but the people who were trying to resist, uh,
Hmm.
and of course I would not doubt that there are agents provocateurs in every one of those supposed riots, kicking off trouble to make it worse. And
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to see people in the so-called alternative media or truth movement in there, um, and they'll be interviewed on the television and either made to look ridiculous or violent or something like that, again to stigmatise all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I shudder to think where the future of this is going. Uh, I I don't know. It's I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, it really shocked me to come to realization that this is happening right now because I haven't been paying attention to alt media as a whole that close just because I don't have a lot of time, to be quite honest. And somebody just kind of referred me to the issue, and I took a look at it over the course of a couple of days, and I was just blown away at how bad things have gotten.
Yeah, I mean it can't be a coincidence that particularly in Europe, I've not really had much of a chance to look at any of the smaller parties in America, if there are indeed any. But in Europe, we're seeing the rise of these types of parties, these fascist kind of parties, in nearly every European country, including the UK. I mean, UKIP are touted as being,
UKIP.
you know, the voice of the people, which is complete garbage. You know, complete garbage. They're just, you know, the soft Nazism, if you like, which
Sure.
which I'm sure once they get into Parliament, into government, which I'm sure they will, because that's their job. They'll get in there and they'll get all the dirty jobs again, like all the small parties get, and they will be more and more radical in their views, and they'll be in a position to implement those types of policies. And you know, anybody who thinks that banning immigrants outright for whatever reasons just affects immigrants, those laws that they bring in affect everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and the people need to realise that. I mean, the irony of my situation here is, you know, we hear about open borders in America, and you know, Mexicans, Canadians, whatever, can just, you know, walk across. Maybe not so much Canadians, but certainly, you know, Mexicans can climb over a fence and come into America. I've got to do an 8,000-mile round trip to renew a visa, you know. this weekend, you know. So it's just there's the irony of that. But you know, I'll go back to the UK, and it's amazing. I've driven across Eastern Europe to Eastern Europe, right across, and nowhere do you get stopped until you get to Britain. And then they kindly ask me if I speak English because I'm driving a foreign car, which is quite funny. But there you go. In terms of, I mean, what would you say are other bad examples of the truth movement in terms of, not you don't have to mention names or anything, I'm just saying the kind of behaviour that goes on.
Sure. Well, you mentioned that worst of the truth movement, a hypothetical event that I kind of talked about, being just the creation of a documentary that's a clip show of just people saying and doing ridiculous things, people from the alternative media. And people have said just threatening things on air. So just saying things that, and again, anytime you're putting out a broadcast, a podcast, whatever, it's public. It's completely public. It's in public domain. It's a record that exists forever. So you want to be a little careful with what you say. And some of the people who get up on a microphone seem to have no discretion, and are just not thinking at all, and they just they throw out threats on air and just ridiculous things. And we've got a cumulative effect of years and years and hours a day of years and years adds up to a lot of potential stuff to put in a documentary, that the whole purpose of the documentary to be defaming the alternative media. So it's just something that would be so easy to make. It's just something that's been on the back of my mind for a long time as a possibility for somebody who would want to discredit alternative media, discredit truth movement, anything of that nature. If you just want to try to destroy that, you just make that film, and it would have it would work pretty well, I think. I don't know what the effect would be, but it sure wouldn't be good for us. I know that.
Well, I suppose if you turn that around and say something like yourself or myself, I'm not into making videos, but say something like us made it and kind of pitched it before, you know, before the mainstream could make it, and pitch it as to say, this is why we have to be better than this. You know, get it out first.
Yeah, huh. I never thought of that possibility. That might be a project worth pursuing.
Well, I mean, it's you know, you've got to beat them at their own game, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure I share your optimism in that somebody won't do that and make it to demonise, you know, people in alternative media. So maybe need to strike while iron's hot and get it out there. I mean, it won't make you many friends, I'm sure.
That's for sure. Yeah.
but then you know, you'll find out who your true friends are, and that's the kind of the way I go. I mean, my the only jingle I've got really is you know, no lizards, no aliens, no nonsense, and that puts a lot of people off. But I don't really want them in the chat box just spouting rubbish, you know. So we've got far more intelligent things to be talking about. In terms of again going back to the the flash mobs, I suppose. I mean, we're getting to that stage as they stoke up racism and stuff. We've seen it in London, etc. And I said a few years ago when the last London riot was on in Tottenham, again started by the shooting of a black guy. I hate using the word black, and I've said it many times on radio as well. I've never seen a black person. I've never seen a white person.
Yeah. Everybody's just a different earth tone shade in reality.
Yeah, but again, it's used to make everything black and white. It's a kind of catchphrase, isn't it? It's the polar opposite. It's polar opposite thing. But of course, black and white don't appear in the spectrum of colour. I mean, so there's no, they don't exist as colours in their own right as such. Flash mobs. Again, I mean, I know you've mentioned Alan Watt before. He mentioned that quite a few years ago, and the Guardian put out an article regarding that the future would be this. There'd be flash mobs, would be this, that, and the next thing. And he's also said that the biggest challenge would be to hold on to your sanity. I mean, in terms of nanotech and cognitive enhancement, and these particles that are going to be swimming around in your brain, you might not be able to hold on to your sanity because you might not be in control of it. So
and increasingly we're unable to maintain our sanity just on a day-to-day quote unquote regular life. We're doing our thing here. We're interested in alternative media, and that's odd enough to begin with, but things are getting a lot weirder and a lot darker and more dangerous. Therefore, I know that I've been somewhat depressed as a consequence of coming across all this Nazi nonsense in alternative media. A step further is maintaining sanity, as you're saying. Newt Gingrich made a point in the Age of Transitions thing that is important. He's saying that technology is going to advance so quickly that no human being can possibly keep up with it. No human being can really effectively change the fact that this technology is rapidly changing, and thus, as a consequence, altering the way we live our lives. Therefore, we have no real, we have nothing to hold on to from our past. So the past erodes away swiftly and suddenly. We're unable to really do anything effective about that. And the consequence of that is that we do go a bit insane because we don't have anything to believe in anymore. And maybe people kind of taking on these bizarre, hateful ideologies is like a last-ditch effort on their part to kind of like hold on to something that they feel they can identify with for all the wrong reasons, but this last sort of spout of tribalism that they're trying to hang on to, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like the film Total Recall. I mean, this could be pitched to people to say, are you going a bit nuts? Is life stressing you out? Take a holiday in the Bahamas. Just come and we'll plug you into this machine, and you can go on holiday to the Bahamas, and you'll think you've been there for 6 months, but you'll only actually have been there an hour. And to restore some form of sanity to you until you go out in the street again, and within a couple of weeks you're thinking of jumping off a bridge, and you go, oh no, hold on a second, I can go to the transhumanist place and I can go on a holiday to Zimbabwe tomorrow or whatever.
Well, the ironic thing about the Total Recall example is that he basically goes crazy within that vacation because it becomes this existential, bizarre sort of nihilistic thing where he doesn't understand what's real anymore at all. And this was supposed to be vacation, and he's going insane within his own mind in this vacation, and it becomes all a thing of that. So your escape is even worse than your trials and tribulations in the real world.
Yeah, the escape's the ultimate trap.
Yeah.
Because they could keep you in that environment, for want of a better word, for as long as they wanted to. I mean, they could. I suppose possibly that just struck me that they keep going on about overcrowded prisons. Imagine they just got you in a room and plugged you into something, and you thought you were in prison.
Yeah. They can make it a prison. You physically would be incapacitated because they could even give you something that you liked quote unquote something that the mouse pressing the lever in order to stimulate that part of their brain that Aldous Huxley was talking about in his Ultimate Revolution speech. It'd be something akin to that. So the person would actually be in bliss, and you'd be doing them a favor. You could rationalize things as such, but the truth is that their body would be incapacitated, and that's just as well as having them in a prison. So you don't have to worry about them at all. No guards. You don't need a guard. You just hook them up to the computer.
Yeah, it's funny. It just sprung to mind. There was a short series called Black Mirror, made in the UK by I can't remember the guy's name. It was he wrote for the Telegraph anyway, and he wrote this series called Black Mirror, and there was one episode in that where this woman woke up in her bed and she went out, and it was kind of an apocalyptic scenario, and there's people trying to kill her and chase her and all the rest of it, and then she was woken up at the end of it, and she was sitting in a chair in front of an audience, and she'd actually murdered somebody or done something against society, as it were, and this was her punishment. She was to repeatedly being put through these scenarios as a punishment, where her life was threatened and there was all these horrible things happening, and she was seeing people getting killed and in all these grotesque ways, and that was her punishment. I mean, it's not beyond possibility, is it?
No, definitely not beyond possibility.
But of course, it'll be pitched as in a good way. Take a vacation. This kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you want to be a James Bond character, or whatever? It almost could be made like a Stanford prison experiment, with 6 people plugged in as guards and 6 people plugged in as inmates, and nobody's actually physically getting hurt, as what happened in the Stanford prison experiment, but they're still going through the whole scenario and seeing what people would do. I don't know.
Yeah, the virtual worlds topic is big in transhumanism too, and that's what all this is like living in a virtual world. They again sell it as a great possibility to do anything and be anything that you want. However, the dark side of this pops up immediately, and for someone like myself, and that's what I think of, at least. And it leaves. I mean, it's hard to imagine because you're dealing with a world that can be imagined, a virtual world that can be engineered any way you want, and people living in that in some sort of weird spiritual, just living in their mind sense, gets really weird real quick.
Yeah, it basically comes down to the question: do you want to be in control of your own mind, or do you want to give it to somebody else? I mean, that's where we are. But of course, the young people will fall for it. I mean, they fell for it in Spain in that nightclub where they got microchips under the skin so they could get into the VIP lounge and all this stuff. It'll be. I mean, are there any actual celebs? Well, I hate the word. Those so-called celebrities. Anybody on the radar pushing this stuff?
You know what? That's interesting with the celebrity side to things, and certainly celebrity is the best way to sell any idea, just because they have a massive audience built in, and people people look up to celebrities. Well, one sort of like hypothetical future that I've wondered about, I don't know, this may not happen at all, but the case of Michael J. Fox having Parkinson's disease, there's been research into Parkinson's in terms of implantable chips that you put in your brain to cure Parkinson's. So if they want to sort of introduce the brain chip as a way to, cure Parkinson's and do wonderful humanitarian things, they could, give one of these chips to Michael J. Fox, and then he would be cured, or at least partially cured, and, they'd be like, oh, it was this implantable microchip that was put in your brain. And, like, what other wonderful things could they do? That's something that I've seen as a possibility. Whether it'll work out like that, who knows? Yeah,
all those things are on the horizon, I think. As again we mentioned earlier, it's always sold as a beneficial thing to the medical profession first, and you'll always get victims, and you can't blame them for grasping at straws, but people who could benefit from such a thing are going to be used as the marketing tools, either wittingly or unwittingly, and and gullible people will say, oh, that's great, and I'm sure there'll be a preventable chip that they put in you, as we were discussing earlier, the nanotechnology going through your bloodstream constantly, looking for disease for you. You know, why would you need that? You know when you're sick.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy to think what will happen. It's something that we really do have to put our minds to. Is how will this work out? How might we prepare ourselves for these things happening in the future? What sort of things do we have to look out for in terms of like Pied Piper type of scenarios? Who's going to pop up to lead us down the wrong path, and how are they going to do it? I think thinking about these sorts of things and just being ready for them, this is a means of self-defense, is something valuable that everybody should be doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned him earlier before you were on air with me, Russell Brand. You know, is the classic Pied Piper in the UK, and he's going to be on Question Time tonight with Nigel Farage. So you've got two Pied Pipers on the same show.
Yeah,
on the BBC, of course. It must be true. It must be true. It must be true.
Yeah.
But I mean, people can't see through that. The fact that Russell Brand is getting on the BBC to spout his idiocy. But there you go. Bertrand Russell Brand, I call him. But that's about it. We've got barely a minute to go. Your final thoughts, or was that them?
Well,
Your final thoughts while you've got your own.
Yeah, exactly. We need to use them while we can here. I'll just say thank you, Neil, for having me on the show. I did enjoy it. It's always reassuring to talk to someone like yourself that, that you can get the sense it's genuine and it's in this alternative media thing for the right reasons. So it takes a little bit of my sadness in realizing the alt media is going in a horrible direction away, and helps me to go forward. So thank you for that, Neil.
Oh, thank you very much for saying so. There's a lot of good people out there. You know, it's just I think the bad ones get all the publicity. I mean, it's like the police officers. You know, the ones that are getting the bad publicity are the ones that are shooting young black guys or white people. It doesn't matter. You never hear any good cop stories, do you?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are plenty out there, but you never hear them. You never hear about the white cop helping the young black guy or the black cop helping the young white guy. You know, all you hear about is shootings and bad news, and that's deliberate as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Aaron, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime in the not too distant future.
Okay, take care, Neil.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers.
No lizards.